Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the New Testament church, and we're still in the book of Acts. We're in Acts 6, 8, 15. We're going to look at Stephen being arrested here. Yesterday we looked at the seven men who were chosen to serve, and then when Luke writing this, he then shifts to the story about Stephen in Acts 6, verses 8 through 15. This is a short section, so I'll read it to you. You can read along with me here. It says, Stephen, a man full of God's grace and power, performed amazing miracles and signs among the people. But one day, some men from the synagogue of freed slaves, as it was called, started to debate with him. They were Jews from Cyrene, Alexandria, Silica, I think is how you say that, and the province of Asia. None of them could stand against the wisdom and the spirit with which Stephen spoke. So they persuaded some men to lie about Stephen, saying, We heard him blaspheme Moses and even God. This roused the people and the elders and the teachers of the religious law. So they arrested Stephen and brought him before the high council. The lying witnesses said, This man is always speaking against the holy temple and against the law of Moses. We have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy the temple and change the customs Moses handed down to us. At this point, everyone in the high council stared at Stephen because his face became as bright as an angel. And so, just some notes and then some of my thoughts as we kind of go through this. This Stephen's actually described here as being filled with faith, the Holy Spirit. We see in verse 5 here, and with grace, power, and wisdom. And so it's interesting to see this. He's the first person after the apostles to have performed wonders and signs, right? So everything so far that we've seen in Acts has been the apostles that has been performing the signs. His power was not physical strength, obviously, right, or worldly knowledge or influence, but the power of the Holy Spirit. So much so that he was, that they were trying to debate him, and none of them could stand against his wisdom and the Spirit. And this is a tactic. Unfortunately, I've seen this from the outside. I've seen this inside the church too. When someone, when you come up against someone, or maybe you're debating or having a discussion with someone, and you can prove their point wrong, or they can't prove your point wrong. A lot of times this is what it'll go to. It goes to lying about the people, name calling, those type of things, lying about them, spreading false rumors about them. And this is what happened here to Stephen. This is the tactics of the Pharisees, right? It's a very Pharisaic attitude to have this is, oh well, I can't debate with you, I can't prove you wrong, so I'm going to go a lot about a lie, and then we're going to see later on it gets to the point to where they did this with Jesus. If I'm going to try to destroy your reputation, if I can't destroy your reputation, then they take it even to the world, we're going to have you murdered. I mean, that's how, you think about these are supposed to be the people of God, but yet if if you were able to refute what they were teaching and show that Jesus was who he was, then they were just going to kill you. Right. And so this is one of the things that I think, and as I don't have this in my notes, this is just kind of, when I think about this and I read this, one of the things that comes to me here is, we've got to learn to make sure that we're open-minded when it comes to studying the scriptures, right? The Pharisees were not. And so I've seen a lot of times in the religious circles where if you prove someone, or you can show in the Bible where it's like, okay, this doesn't really add up to what you're saying, then instead of us saying, oh, you know what, maybe we need to look at that, maybe we need to dive a little bit deeper, or maybe this doesn't mean what I thought it meant, or maybe what I've believed for a while here is wrong, and instead of being open to it, we're closed off, right? And instead of saying, hey, maybe I need to look deeper into this and study this and see, maybe I can find the truth in this, and admit that maybe I'm what I thought was wrong. We instead go on the offensive and start attacking people, and say, oh well, you don't believe what I believe, so therefore I'm going to say these bad things about you. I'm going to spread rumors about you. I'm going to spread lies about you, or whatever. However, we're going to do that, or my particular denomination is going to talk bad about this denomination because we believe different things, instead of actually sitting down and having conversations and talking. We're just gonna talk bad about each other, and sometimes from the pulpits, and sometimes in our classrooms and stuff like that. And that's not what God called us to do. And so, this is the type of stuff that comes out of that. That this Pharisaic attitude that we see from these religious leaders, and again, they like, one of the 10 commandments is not to lie. And yet, because they can't prove they can't disprove what Stephen is talking about, they persuade their people to lie. I mean, so it's like, I mean, it's just an interesting. And so if you have to sin or you have to do things in order to make someone else look bad or to prove your religious point, then your religious point is probably not valid. I mean, that's just kind of, if we're going to get to the bottom of it. And so this is where we need to be careful and not to get this type of attitude and understand, one of the things that we need to do and where Stephen got his power came from the Holy Spirit, right? It wasn't it was the Holy Spirit. And so because of that, we need to make sure we lean on the Holy Spirit and not on our own, trying to lean on our own understanding, of everything. Let the Holy Spirit guide us and stuff. And we need to be open to that. And I don't know, I like to harp on that a little bit because I used to be on the other side of this. I used to be on the side of, this is what is right and nothing else. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to anything outside of my core or my religious group that I'm a part of or denomination that I'm a part of. I'm not going to listen to anything outside of it. I'm going to stay in this echo chamber. And if anyone else teaches something different than that, then we're not going to listen to it, and they're wrong. And it's like, and many years ago I opened myself up to the fact that I didn't know everything, and I started to dive down into this and study different from everywhere. And it's amazing what you learn when you do that, right? And there's a lot of things. There's things I taught 5 years ago I wouldn't teach today. There's things I believed 5 years ago that I do not believe today. And it's because I had the willingness to open my mind to things and say, hey, let me really get behind the context of this, right? Instead of just grabbing one verse and cherry picking that verse and making it mean what I wanted it to mean, let's dive down into the entire context of not just the chapter that it's in, but the entire book that it's in to get a better understanding of what does this verse or these verses really mean when I read this and I dive into that. Because, I mean, I can find any verse in the Bible and cherry pick it to mean whatever I wanted to. And a lot of religious groups have done that. And we've got to make sure we don't do that, and that we understand and get a full understanding of what the Bible says. So again, I know that's a little sidetrack, but I like to address this sometimes when we see the religious leaders behaving the way they are, because sometimes we parallel that in our churches and stuff. We parallel what from a leadership standpoint, and even from a member standpoint, right? Just as a regular Christian, we parallel the Pharisaic attitude sometimes, and sometimes we look more like the Pharisees than we do the apostles and Jesus's followers and Jesus. And that hurts the church. And so I want to make sure that we address that and hit that and aware of it. Make sure we look in that mirror. Make sure we don't become like that. Make sure we're more like Stephen and less like the Pharisees or the religious leaders at this point. So again, the religious leaders here, they do to Stephen as they did to Jesus, right? You can go Matthew 26 and other chapters. Yeah, Matthew 26 is one of them. But they get someone to lie about him, right? Accuse him of blasphemy, incite a riot, and then arrest him and then post false charges against him. And so they didn't waste any time with Peter. Or I'm sorry, with Stephen. Jesus, it took them a while to be able to build up to this point. At this point, they're like, bam, bam, bam. We're gonna do that. And so something here that is amazing here. His face became as bright as an angel, just as Moses has had. And so you can see that in Exodus 34. If you want to look in Exodus 34, you can see that. And trust me, with these religious leaders, that didn't go unnoticed. Right? That didn't go unnoticed. They would have known or had an idea behind that and why that was. And so the parallel here is Stephen, like Moses, was bringing God's instructions to Israel. And so there's a parallel here between Moses and Stephen. And we're going to even see a little bit further into to Stephen. Obviously, if you know the story of Stephen, I hope this isn't a spoiler for most of you, but he's about to be murdered by these people, stoned to death. And so, there's this parallel here. And so it didn't go unnoticed, the parallel between his face becoming bright, just like Moses did, and him bringing this message to Israel, just like Moses did. So this would have not gone unnoticed by the religious leaders here. And so at this point, Stephen's just arrested. Now, tomorrow, we're going to look at Stephen addressing the council, and he's bold, and it's a whole chapter, and so I'm not going to be able to read the whole thing to you. It's Acts 7, 1 to 8, 1, and I'm not, so I don't know if you want to read ahead for this one, you can, but we'll go over it, and I'll hit as much details in it. But we'll look at the way he addresses them, and I mean, just calls them out. He calls the religious leaders out on their hypocrisy and who they really are. Very similar to how Jesus did, and got him arrested, and then the same thing happened to him. So I hope you learn from this. I hope you see the insight. I hope we learn to reflect on ourselves. I know it's one of the things I regularly try to do, because as a Christian, I'm not perfect and I mess up all the time. But one of the things I try to do regularly is why I do studies like this. I mean, this studies is just as much for my benefit as I hope it is for yours, because you learn these things, you see these insights as you go through them, especially as you study it chronologically and you study the Bible chronologically. I hope these are helpful. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do so. We're going to keep publishing these. We're going to do this for the rest of the year. I don't know what our next study is going to look like, but we're going to hit a lot of stuff because we're going through the entire New Testament in chronological order as we go through everything. So that subscribe, share this if you appreciate it, if you like it, share it, and get others to view it. Hopefully we can grow this and continue to grow and influence people and bring people to Christ. So as always, I appreciate everyone for watching.